So, with the technical preview ending last week and knowing Valhalla is coming back to Halo Infinite, I wanted to take a look at some maps I would like to see come back. I don't think any of these will probably make it, but I'll be taking 3 maps from Halo 1 through 3 and explaining why I'd love to see these maps come back. It was pretty hard to choose from 3 maps from each game, but I try to choose maps that haven't already been remade. So, before we get to the list, it's time for me to chill for myself for a second. I plan on making more Halo Infinite content when it comes closer to coming out and after it comes out. So if you could take a second to like the video, leave a comment after you have whatever thoughts you have on the video, and subscribe. It would help me out immensely, and I would also appreciate if you followed my Twitch channel and any of the links down below. Now with the shilling out of the way, back to Halo. Halo Combat Evolved has a lot of iconic maps in the series, but they weren't the most competitively focused maps either. Maps like Chiron, Boarding Action, and Rat Race just weren't that really fun competitively. But let's stop for a second and let's just take a look at Chiron's map. It's absolutely insane, and if you've memorized this map and all the teleporters and where they take you to, hats off to you, man, you're an absolute madman. Anyways, with that little side thing out of the way, let's start with the map Boarding Action. This map is definitely one of the black sheep even amongst the Combat Evolved maps, but I feel with the new additions to the sandbox, it can make this map shine, especially with the grappling hook. You could potentially grapple with debris between ships, or even just outright grapple to the ship directly, and it would be a great little mini battle in space without the spacecrafts. It would be an extremely unique map, offering some really interesting gameplay. The next map takes us to a significantly smaller space, Battle Creek. Battle Creek is just an iconic map. It was brought back in Halo 2 and Reach, but we haven't even seen it since. This map kind of fills a shipment-like role in the Halo games, where it would just be a nice little small map where you would have constant action. Anywhere you look, you would see someone almost instantly. And I really like those kinds of maps because they keep just constant gameplay and keep you in the flow of action and keep you engaged within the 3 critical points of Halo's gameplay: guns, grenades, and melee. So last but not least for Halo Combat Evolved, we have Blood Gulch. Like Battle Creek, Blood Gulch has just an iconic history. It has been remastered quite a few times, and I would say has had maps even inspired off of it, like Valhalla. Halo Combat Evolved had a far different map design than the rest of Halo. The maps felt much more feeling towards a party game and kicking back with some buddies and having some fun. And many of these maps just cared about having fun and being creatively cool than being competitively viable. And I would like to see more of these kinds of maps come back into Halo Infinite. Actually, really quick before we go into Halo 2, I want to give some honorable mentions to the PC only maps that were ported to MCC. They're all cool and interesting maps, and especially Death Island and okay, I can't even pronounce that name. And then there was also a map I'd never seen before, Ice Fields. That map would be really cool for Halo Infinite Big Team Battle. Also, when I mentioned Chiron, this map, yeah, it's really weird, and it stands out as one of the weird maps, but playing with no shields and shotties is some of the most fun you can have in CE. So, now it's time we look at the Halo 2 maps. And looking at the Halo 2 maps, there's a lot that stand out to me. Ascension, which has been remastered many times. Wizard, another one of those. Zanzibar, another one of those. Halo 2 just being filled with many classic maps. But also, I want to say real quick, why did they change Zanzibar to Last Resort? Like, we need to make Zanzibar great again, okay? And yes, I want Zanzibar brought back, and I know I said it would only have 3 maps in each game, but this is my video. I'm going to do what I want, and you can deal with it. Zanzibar needs to be brought back. But with that less spicy take out of the way, we're going to go to a nice and hot take that Backwash needs to be remastered, and I stand by that. Backwash is probably one of the coolest maps in Halo 2 because of the environment. But probably a lot of people didn't even get to play Backwash because, like I said, it was DLC and came out later into Halo 2's life. But with the Flood potentially coming back in Halo Infinite, I think this would be a great map to just have some maybe lore built into it, to build up maybe how the Flood outbreak happened again. I don't know, I just think it could be a really interesting location. Another DLC map I'd like to see them bring back from Halo 2, and I know there are probably better design maps that I could choose, but this is one of the biggest on the OG Xbox, and I'd like to see it remade again, considering it has predecessors like Sidewinder and the successor like Avalanche. If it's right in place with a nice big team battle snow environment, and I'd love to see it come back and be remade. And I'd love to see them give those little weird cone fusion coils things, the Forerunner fusion coils, another try. They had a massive blast radius though, but they would be really cool to see again. And I'd like to see them redesign that whole structure and make it just grand. You would also even get the cool backdrop of the library from Halo 2 in the background, or whatever library would be in Installation 07. And the final map to round out Halo 2 is Relic. Yes, I chose all DLC maps for my Halo 2 section, fight me. But I feel like Relic would be, again, another opportunity to lore build in the multiplayer, and for us just to have a nice little cool, chill, scenic environment to fight on, which, who wants to complain about that? Also, I think it's one of the most underrated maps of Halo 2. Now we get to move on to my personal favorite Halo, and favorite Halo sandbox, Halo 3. Halo 3 has many sandbox maps that haven't returned since, maybe for a good reason, but maybe it's time one of these returns with some changes, and I'm talking about Foundry. Now with the new additions like the grappling hook and the sprint and clamber, these would of course change how these maps play that I'm going to choose for Halo 3, but I think Foundry would still feel right at home in Halo Infinite, and there'd be a nice little opportunity for a medium-sized sandbox map for players to create whatever they'd like to create. And obviously there's the low effort way, but they could even port classic MLG maps that were used in Foundry and play them here, and you'd maybe have to edit them a little bit, but I still think they would play the same and it would play very similarly to Halo 3. I know I would personally love to return to Foundry and see all the new game modes and game types people would create and just how much the map would change, but I would love to see the evolution of Foundry continue on. So, let's move out of the darkened dungy warehouse and let's move to Obi-Wan Kenobi's ground, or the High Ground. High Ground is definitely not one of the best maps in Halo 3's roster, but to me it stands out as one of the cooler maps in concept, where you have one team on a beach and one team defending the outpost. To me that concept was just very fascinating from when they introduced it in the Halo 3 Vidoc. And I think with the new updates to Halo Infinite Sandbox, it would play just as well, if not even better. I would just really enjoy seeing High Ground return again, and I think it'd be welcome in Halo Infinite Sandbox. I think Halo Infinite would be remiss without a Forerunner map. And I know almost all the maps in the Halo series come from Forerunner structures, but something that just screams Forerunner to me, and it takes place on the Ark, so it should, is Construction. Construction is a 3-leveled map that has high levels of verticality that we have not really seen in any of the Halo maps since, and I would love to just see people grappling from one level to another, or even from across the tops to each side of the map. Like, playing Halo Infinite has made me wish there was a grapple hook mod for Halo 3, so I could just see how these maps would play in Infinite, because I think that just Halo 3 in general, you could transfer a lot of the maps over to Infinite, and you wouldn't have many problems. And Construction is the perfect embodiment of that to me. So, with Halo Infinite coming out soon, and we've had the chance to experience 3 of the maps that are coming, and I have no gripes with them. The 3 locations being highly varied, a rundown hydro plant, a part of New Mombasa that is still getting reconstructed from the Human Covenant War, with the orbital lift in the background, and a training ground for new Spartans that's in the memory of Noble 6 and Sergeant Johnson. Every one of these maps seems to be filled with small bits of story, and that just gives them character. The character that the Bungie era had. And I can almost remember every map from Halo 1 through 3, and I know all of them like the back of my hand. I hope Halo Infinite can achieve the same for me. I personally didn't enjoy Halo 4 or 5's multiplayer as much, because the maps were just so bland, and the gameplay just didn't feel like classic Halo. But with the little bit of Infinite I got to play, it seems like that's going to change. And I'm extremely excited to meet new people and make new experiences in Infinite, and I hope you guys are along with the ride with me.